What's up, y'all? Empire. Season 2, episode 16, basically. Grandma Leah returns and she out for blood, y'all. Let's get into it. So it starts off with Andre and Leah. He's at the home with her. They're playing bingo. And he's just trying to get to know. What the heck is this in my eye? Sorry. He's trying to get to know her. He's asking her questions like, do you know where your family is? Do you know your history? And all this other kind of stuff, like just picking her brain or whatever, trying to get to know her, like I said. And she starts talking and she's like, yeah, I had the voice. They tried to shut me up, but they couldn't shut me up because, I had the voice and whatnot. And, she was like, the boy is famous now. So somebody else has a bingo and she has a tantrum and she took everything and just threw it off the table or whatever. So I'm like, okay. So then she looks at Andre and she's like, oh, you got those eyes. Are you kin to me? So, she kind of figured that Andre is related to her in some way. They never said, he never said to her how they were related. But she, in the back of her mind, she knows. So now we get to Jamal and Hakeem. And they're collaborating in the studio on a song. And they're trying to figure out if Tiana or Laura should sing the verse in the song. So, Becky is in there, she's like the hype man or whatever. And when they're trying to decide who should sing, Hakeem is like, well, I think Tiana would be good for it. And they're like, wait a minute, you don't think Laura should do it? That's wifey. He's like, yeah, but Laura will understand. This is business. It's not personal. So, I think Tiana would be better off for it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, I know Laura is not as seasoned in the game as Tiana is, but Tiana has success on her own. Don't you think Laura would be good on it? Because it was a song I think that was supposed to be on a soundtrack or something like that. And it's like if you put Laura on it, it'll blow her up and people will be asking, oh, who's that girl on the record with Hakeem? But no, he was like he wanted Tiana. So I'm like, oh, that's gonna cause friction. Oh my god, my eyes, what's going on? I'm like, that's gonna cause friction between you and Laura and Tiana, because you already know Laura and Tiana got this little beef going on. So now we get to Cookie, Lucius, and D Major. And D Major is like a part of the Aces. Like, I forgot what his title was exactly, but he's basically like not a scout, but he handles, I guess, like the performances or whatever for the Aces. And Cookie and Lucius are bumping heads because they're co-CEOs or whatever. So they bumping heads and they cracking on each other or whatever. And Jamal comes in and he's upset because Cookie traded in his solo for a collab. She wanted all of them to have a song together. And Jamal is like, well, I thought I was just performing, one of my songs or whatever. I didn't know I had to do a collab. And she's like, no, I have your best interest. I'm this is going to be good. If I put the word out there, it's going to be good. So Jamal is not really feeling that. He really wanted to perform his single. So, now we got Cookie's older sister, Candace, Vivica Fox rather, and she's like, oh, hi, Laretha. I'ma need Candace to stop calling her Laretha. Because first of all, that's Cookie. Okay? And I understand you her sister and all, but we don't like when you call her Laretha. Stop doing that. That's disrespectful. Don't call her Laretha. She obviously doesn't want to be known as Laretha. Call her Cookie. She's Cookie. Call her Cookie. So, Candace arrived basically to tell Carol, I've had your kids for all this time. Enough is enough. If you don't get your kids by the summer, I don't know what to tell you, but I'm not watching them no more. So Carol is like, no, I'm still getting myself together. I'm getting my life together. She's telling Cookie, and Cookie is like, well, listen, I only have a 2-bedroom condo. And Candace is like, well, you need to figure out where them kids gonna sleep at, because enough is enough. I can't do it anymore. So Carol was like, please, can you please just hold on just a little bit longer? I'm halfway there or whatever. So Candace is basically like trying to stand her ground or whatever, but she ain't really trying to hear it. So, Jamal and D Major are like, they're in the studio and they ain't agreeing on the song or whatever. And, I think Jamal like busted in on a studio session or whatever with him. And D Major was upset about it. And he's like, yo, you coming into my session and you interrupted me. And he kicks everybody out. So Jamal comes to him complaining and whatnot. Next thing you know, they aggressively pushing each other. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I'm looking and I'm like, they about to bone. They about to do something. So, lo and behold, they do. They in the studio making out. Basically, I guess the makeout session turned into sex. Because D Major was like, I wanted to kiss you since I saw you. And I'm like, oh, all right. So, I guess the makeout led to sex. Well, no, I'm assuming. So, it went from that scene to Tiana and Hakeem. And they're singing the song together. And the song actually sounds nice or whatever. And, a lot of the stuff that Tiana is saying in the song kind of like holds true to the situation that her and Laura and Hakeem is in, because Hakeem is engaged to Laura, but I think Hakeem still may have an inkling of feelings toward Tiana and vice versa. So she's basically like, ain't no competition and all this other stuff. And even Hakeem is looking at her like, wait, you trying to say something? But I mean, it is what it is. That's how she's feeling. Sometimes when you sing lyrics to a song or whatever, that's why people love music, because music, you can relate to music in any aspect. Like, there's a song out there for everything. So, Tiana's in the booth just, I guess, really feeling the words, and Hakeem is picking up on it, but he don't really know what to think about it. So after they lay the tracks or whatever, Hakeem is like, oh wow, it's 1:00? I thought it was 10. I gotta get home. Laura waiting for me. And Tiana's like, oh, look at you. You got a wifey and a baby mama. Because Hakeem, I used to know, would be heading to the strip club at this time. So he's like, you got jokes. I'm like, well, it is true. You about to have a baby with Anika, and you about to marry Laura. So it's good he trying to be responsible and he all in love and stuff, but we all know Hakeem is a thought. Plain and simple, Hakeem is a thought. So then, as Tiana's leaving, he's staring at Tiana, looking at her like, she might move on to rappers, ball plays, but y'all know I hit it first. I just had to throw that in there. That probably wasn't appropriate for the moment, but that's the first thing that popped up in my head. I hit it, 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 I hit it first. All right, moving on. So, now we get to the Lions trying to come together and do a song or whatever. And Jamal and Lucius is arguing because Lucius is playing like this old sounding song, and Jamal is like, that's kind of corny. Can we do something like a little bit up tempo, something more, of the music of today and all that? So him and Lucius just bumping heads or whatever. Hakeem is like, yo, can we just get this over with so we can move on to something else? And then like, they had a moment for a second, but then, Andre came in with Grandma Leah. All hell broke loose because Lucius looked like he just saw a ghost. And, everybody would think, I never caught on to the fact that people thought that Lucius didn't know his mother was alive. I knew that Lucius knew his mother was alive because Thirsty went to the home to pay for her staying in the home or whatever. So I'm like, if Thirsty went to go do it, we know Lucius put him up to it, because Thirsty is Lucius' yes man. So he arrives with Grandma Leah and she's like, oh, Dwight. So Lucius is like, you have no idea what you've done. She's dangerous. So Lucius and Cookie go and sit off to the side while Andre takes her away. And Cookie is like, well, why did you lie? He was like, I didn't lie. My mother did try to drown me. She did try to commit suicide in front of me. She's sick. But what she didn't know was that the gun wasn't loaded. So he was like, my mother died the day they put her in that home. And he was like, the government let her roam the streets because back then there wasn't really a handle on bipolar disorder, nor was there like, I guess, medications or, something to help stabilize it. So he's like, they let her roam the streets, and and then under Reagan they let her roam the streets, and she did some next stuff or something like that. So he put her in a home, and he basically wanted her to stay dead because nobody understands how dangerous she really is. So, all of us are thinking, oh, Lucius, it can't be that bad. Like, okay, she tried to drown you as a kid. She was sick then. Okay, whatever, Lucius. It ain't that bad until we get to the end. Because there's a lot that happened in this episode, and I'm going to try and get to it because how it ended was cray-cray. So Laura and Hakeem are together, and Laura hears that Hakeem chose to put Tiana on the song, but besides her, and she's like, "Oh, come on, I'm your fiance. Why couldn't you put in a good word for me to be on the soundtrack? Like that would have done wonders for me." And he's like, "Babe, it's not personal. It's business. It has nothing to do with you." And she's like, "Wouldn't you?" You should have fought for me. You should have, reassured them, hey, Laura will be a good fit for the album. He's like, well, I'm just doing it because, not to say that you're not a good artist, but Tiana is more seasoned. So it's nothing personal. I love you. I don't have any feelings for Tiana. It's just business. Don't worry about it. And, she's like, okay, I'm going to just deal with it, whatever. So, Andre, and it's a scene with Andre and with Lucius, Cookie, and Thirsty. And Thirsty is trying to take Leah back to the home. So Andre is in the car with Rhonda, and he sees this going on. So he gets out, and he's like, no, I'll take her to my house. Don't take her back to the home. And Lucius is like, fall back. You don't know the situation. Like, I understand you want to get answers, but this ain't the way to do it. This woman is dangerous. So he's like, I'm going to take her back to the home. So when Leah is at the car, she's like, no, I want to go home with my Dwight. So he takes her home. Lucius takes her home. He has a maid and the nurses there, and he tells the nurse, listen, I want you to make sure she takes every last one of her pills. I want you to make sure she eats, and she goes right to the room. She takes her pills. You put her to bed. You don't take your eyes off of her. You watch her at all times. So the maid was like, yes, Lucius, I'll do that. So, he basically had her under tight restrictions because, again, nobody knows how dangerous she is. So now we get to Thirsty and Harper. Thirsty has Harper in the car, and they're talking all kinds of junk. He's telling her about, asking her, like, why did you want to become a journalist? Stuff like that. And, they basically talking trash or whatever, and he's basically threatening her, like, listen, you putting yourself in a dangerous situation by, finding out the information about Leah Walker. Now that you put yourself in that situation, I'm gonna have to keep you quiet, because if this gets out in the blogs or whatever, then that's gonna be a problem. And Harper is like, well, I'm not scared of you. What are you gonna do? Hurt me? What are you gonna do? Kill me? Do what you gotta do and get it over with. He's like, listen, I'm a gentleman. I wouldn't harm I wouldn't harm a piece of hair on your head. So he's like, I'll see you later, Harper. And she's like, all right, goodbye, Thirsty. I appreciate it. Before she could finish talking, these two goons snatched her up and took her away. And Thirsty just drove off. I'm like, dang, Harper, we can only imagine what's going to happen to you, because Lucius is evil. He don't care. So now we see Jamal and D Major, they have an encounter with each other. Like, they come across each other again, and Jamal is trying to talk to him, like, hey, and D Major just basically blows him off. So later when they speak about it, D Major explains that, he's not out yet. And Jamal is like, well, I'm out, I'm proud about it, and I stand in my truth. I can't get with your way of operating. And I'm like, okay, Jamal, that may be all well and good for you, because you came out and the way you did it is the way you wanted to do it, but it's not as easy for everybody else. Everybody has different situations, which I feel is really, really sad, but that's the world we live in. There's just people who can't get with the gay lifestyle. And I mean, it's really nobody's business if you really think about it. It's nobody's business how other people live their lives. But I get it. It's hard for people to come out to their friends, families, parents, cousins. And I mean, D Major is an example of a lot of the people that's in the industry now that's down low and ain't coming out like Come on, like we know it's plenty of people that's in the industry that's down low and refuse to come out. They're scared to come out because they're scared of the judgment, they're scared of the scandals, they're scared of all kinds of things. So they live a secret lifestyle, and that's what D Major is doing. You know, it's just what he has to do because he's afraid of coming out. He's afraid of being judged. So Jamal is not really sure if he's gonna, have any type of relationship with D Major or whatever. So Lucius and Cookie are talking, and Lucius is like, I don't want it to get out about my mother. So Cookie is like, well, if you don't want it to get out about your mother, you need to do right for your sons. And Cookie is basically reminding him, listen, you are Lucius Lyon. You are the king of empire. You do the right thing. And, that's just basically something for him to talk about. And I'm like, Cookie is always the voice of reason. She is always the level-headed one. I mean, she a goon too, but she the level-headed one too. So Candace and Carol are in the coffee shop, and Carol is just feeling guilty because she wants to confess to Cookie what went down while Cookie was locked up. She wants to relieve her guilt. So Candace is like, no, you shouldn't say nothing, girl. And she's like, I need to let Cookie know that I helped Lucius kill some people back in the day. And I'm like, that's the secret? All this time I'm thinking Carol slept with Lucius, or she stole something from Cookie, she did something grimy to Cookie. But I'm kind of like wondering, like, why would that upset Cookie so much? Call me slow, I don't know. But I'm like, why would that upset Cookie? Because, Cookie knows about Lucius and his dirty antics and all of that. So why would that upset Cookie? So that's kind of like a question I still have. But, I guess. So Candace is like, no, keep your mouth shut because you don't want to deal with the wrath of Cookie. So you need to just keep that to yourself. So while they're talking pretty loud. It's some guy sitting at the bar and he's listening to their whole conversation. I'm like, oh, hell. I was like, that's either somebody from the CIA or the FBI. That's a cop. That's somebody that's listening. So now we get to Anika and Rhonda. And Anika has all this stuff from Hakeem, and Hakeem done baby-proofed her house and everything like he said he would. Rhonda done bought them some stuff for the baby that she had for her baby, and Anika is just so excited. So it was a part where this box was about to fall on Rhonda. And one of the guys that was helping move the stuff in, he pushes Rhonda out the way like, oh, look out. So he pushes her. So in that moment, Rhonda has a flashback about falling down the stairs. Now, remember, Rhonda kind of lost her memory after falling down the stairs. So now it's coming back to her, oh, I might have been pushed as opposed to me falling down the stairs. So Anika is like, oh my God, I thought it was an accident. What do you mean you think you were pushed? She's like, I don't know. Like, it's starting to come back to me. So I'm like, boo-boo kitty, we know you did it. Don't sit up here and try and play like you ain't pushed that girl down the stairs. So, some people were like, well, what if she didn't do it? Like I said before, Anika could be used as a distraction to the person who really pushed her down the stairs, or Anika did it, and it's just all this stuff that's going on, and these scenes is a distraction for the reveal that Anika did it, or I don't know, but I feel like she did it because Anika was acting real shady. She was acting real, like, low-key jealous when Rhonda was walking around saying that she was pregnant and whatnot and saying how Lucius caused the baby to air. And at the time, Anika was pregnant too and nobody else knew it but her. And then Anika was doing some crazy stuff like stalking Laura because Laura and Hakeem was together, and this is when she found out she was pregnant. So that's why I'm like, Anika could have done it. It's a lot of questions you can ask, and I just hope we find out the answer in the season finale, because I'm like, I want to find out who pushed her. I really strongly, sincerely think it was Anika, but we'll see. That could be what Lee Daniels wants us to think, but it could be somebody we would never think that it was. But I don't know. We'll see. So Leah and Lucius have this moment together at the piano, and Leah keeps calling Lucius Dwight, and Lucius has to keep reminding her, my name is Lucius. So they're singing together a song that they used to sing when Lucius was younger. And, they had a moment, like a touching moment. And, Leah is like, I was sick, but I'm better. And he kept constantly having to remind her. She's like, are you okay, Dwight? And he's like, my name is Lucius. I'm going to need you to call me Lucius. So now Lucius takes the song that he did with his mom and he takes it to Jamal and Hakeem. He plays it and they're like, oh, we like this. So he just changed it up a bit to like, sound current and sound like it's something that they would sing and rap on. So Jamal sings on it. Lucius sings on it. Hakeem comes on it and he has a nice verse. Like his verse was real, like better than any other verse that he's ever done. It was a nice verse. It was very real from the heart. So, Lucius is like, I know y'all don't like me. I know y'all think I'm the worst person in the world. But no matter what, music is what keeps us together. And no matter what, we're a union. We're a union. We're a unit. We're the Lions. Even if y'all are punk asses. And I'm like, okay, that was a cute moment. Like, it's always good moments like this. And I remember Ashley Miller, shout out to her, she was like, they always have these touching moments when Andre is not in the room. And I said, that's what be setting off his disorder. She's like, right, they need to include him. And I'm like, right, because a lot of the time when they come together and they do these songs together and Andre is not included, it sets off Andre's bipolar disorder. Because remember, when they did the You're So Beautiful song from season 1, Andre like flipped and was about to shoot himself in the head. So when they have moments like this, they need to include Andre in it. Like, they need to, because, they making it seem like Andre can't sing when we know Trey Byers, the actor who plays Andre, we know he could sing in real life. So they need to bring Andre on there one day and just have him shut it down and have Lucius like, they need to do that on one of these episodes because poor Andre, he always get the short end of the stick. Poor baby. Poor little Tank Tank. So now we get to the part of the show where it gets good. So we learn that the guy who was sitting at the bar in the coffee house, his name is Tariq, and he's an old friend of Carol's. So they're just basically reminiscing, and Tariq is like, oh, the Carol I used to know back in the day, she would be on her third, fourth drink by now. Carol was like, she wants to tell him that she's, I guess a recovering addict or whatever. But she's like, no, I just have to get up really early, so I can't really drink or whatever. And he's like, okay, well, I'll just drink alone or whatever, and we'll drink together or something like that. So they're talking and they're reminiscing. He happens to pull out his wallet. Lo and behold, in big, bold, blue letters, it say FBI. So basically, Tariq is a Fed who's still after Lucius and possibly Cookie. Because remember, the Feds was after Lucius and Cookie in season 1 and part of season 2. The first half of season 2. So he, knowing Carol, maybe Carol will sing like a canary. Who knows? So he trying to get close to Carol so he could get info on Lucius and Cookie. I'm like, nothing is ever what it seems in the Lion dynasty. So now we get to the Leviticus performance, and they're performing the song that Lucius presented to them. Andre introduces them, and they perform. They ask D Major how he felt about it. He gives them the primetime spot at the Aces. So they're, excited. They're ecstatic. Now they're going to have the main spot at the Aces. So so we go to Portia and Carol, and Portia says to her, man, it must feel weird, or you must feel some kind of way that you have a sister that has it all or whatever. And, but she's like, me, I would, take it, or I would do something. I would sabotage it. But you know what? Maybe you not that petty. And then she walks away. I'm like, Lord, Portia, don't be putting no thoughts like that in Carol's mind, because she probably is a little bit jealous of Cookie. I mean, I honestly think that Candace and Carol are jealous of Cookie. So now we get to D Major and Jamal. And, Jamal is basically willing to forget the whole thing with D Major being afraid to come out and whatnot. And they agree to meet up later and to chill and to hang out or whatever. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I mean, I guess Jamal is just like, listen, I'm going to just get mine. I'm going to just get what I want and just deal with it. So now, this scene and the scene after were the two most interesting scenes. We get to Anika and Rhonda. And they're in the house and they're hanging out or whatever. Rhonda's having a sip of wine. And Anika is like, oh, I would love to have some wine right now. So Rhonda's like, well, if you have like a little sip or whatever, it won't hurt the baby. Wine's actually good. It's not that bad. And, Anika is like, well, I want it, but I won't touch it. I'm just trying to stay healthy. I'm trying to keep it together. My mother will kill me. After the whole scare at the hospital, I just want to take care of myself. So Anika happens to put her feet up on the table. And the shoes that she's wearing is the same exact shoes that Rhonda saw, in her moment of consciousness after she was pushed down the stairs. Now that she knows that she was pushed down the stairs, it's the same exact shoes she saw walking out the front door. So in that moment, she gets nervous. So Anika's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I think I just had too much to drink or something like that. And I'm like, Rhonda, you better run. Anika did it. And if she didn't do it, she knows somebody who did it because she got on the same exact red bottom flat shoes that walked about that house. I'm like, Rhonda, you in danger, girl. So now we get to the last scene, and it's with Lucius and his mother. So Lucius is, he ready for bed, whatever, got his little do-rag on, letting his soul glow. And he goes down to the dining room, and his mother's there, and he's like, Mama, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. What you still doing up? And she's like, come here. So we look, and she got the windows open. She got a bunch of cakes sitting in the dining room. And he's like, well, Mama, where's Juanita? And she's like, I sent her away. He was like, well, Mama, you can't send her away. She lives here. She was like, she don't live here no more. And I'm like, oh, Mama got an agenda. What's going on? So she's like, I sat here all day slaving, making these cakes, and you gonna eat them. So she had the knife in her hand like she was going to stab him. And she's like, you better eat that cake, Dwight. You better sit your ass down and eat that cake. And I'm like, ooh. So he eating the cake like he like a little boy in this moment. And she's like, you sent me away for 21 years. You ain't come by to see me. You ain't care. You just left me there. Your father left me. You left me. And I was in that home by myself for 21 years. He's like, well, Mama, you were sick. She was like, I was sick, but I'm better now. And she was like, I was weak then. I'm not weak now. What else she said? She was like, she was like, I was good. She was like, all my troubles didn't come until I had you. I was just fine. But when I had you, that's when I started losing my mind. And she was like, you know what? I regret the most? That I didn't kill you when I had the chance. Now you better eat that cake. I'm like, oh, damn, Lucius. I'm like, okay. Now I see why Lucius acts the way he does. Now I see why Lucius is evil. Now I see why Lucius is, he think he invincible. His mama crazy. And I mean, we saw that she was crazy in them little scenes, but she is legit crazy. So that's how the scene ended. And I'm like, Lucius, you better, act like you bulimic or something. You better do something and make yourself either throw up that cake or poop it out, something. Because I think Mama poisoned that cake. I think she did something to them cakes because something ain't right. And when she told him to eat the cake, the first thing I thought was that scene and what's love got to do with it. When Ike shoved that cake and Tina's face was like, eat the cake, Anime. Eat the cake. Eat the cake, Anime. I'm like, damn, Lucius, I feel bad for you. But I mean, I don't think he died because he gonna be in the next episode. But I mean, we'll see. So the next episode is with the whole Asa thing. And it looks like a lot of craziness is happening with that. And all I know is that somebody may get shot at the Aces. We don't know who. We don't know if they'll die. We don't know nothing. I just need for Wednesday to hurry up and come back like now because I want to find out what happened. But that was Empire season 2 episode 16. Y'all let me know how y'all felt about it. Like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.